top slide, title slide. This is a vineyard here north of Prosa that was abandoned, and it just highlights the importance of irrigation here. If we don't irrigate in Eastern Washington, there is no wine. So it becomes very important to talk about water. As we move ahead, because we are in the subject of water, I was just thinking of, can we refreshen our minds a little bit about the importance of that water and how it moves through the plant. And so one major role that the water plays in a plant is the aid of the photosynthesis. It's a factor, it's a major ingredient in the photosynthetic process. And the photosynthesis is basically the process where the plants are going to make sugars and carbohydrates. And water is important because it donates electrons in a very complex process that is vital for that photosynthesis to take place, and also it donates hydrogen ions that powers that process. Then we have the nutrient and sugar transport. We know very well that water is a universal solvent. So the plant uses this water as a means of transportation, that all the nutrients that are going to be in the soil, they need to be moved to the growing tissues of the plant, to the storage tissues, and also to the fruit. And the water plays an important role because after dissolving all these nutrients, they are being transported to where they are actually needed. Then after the photosynthetic process has happened, the sugars in the leaf, they are not actually needed in the leaf in that massive amount. The leaf is growing, yes, but the sugar has to be transported to other growing tissues. They have to be transported to storage organs, maybe in the stem or in the root for the next season, or in the fruit, which is an important byproduct for the plant. And so the water will help dissolving that sugar and translocate it to where it's needed. Then we have the growth, the general growth of the plant, where we have a permanent, irreversible expansion in the cell wall. And that is only possible with the water which has been absorbed by the plant to expand the cells to a point that they cannot grow back. They continue expanding, and then we see the plant growing. Then the target pressure, the pressure that is within the system, within the xylem, helps the plant to grow upright or to keep upright. Then we know very well that in the middle of summer, we need water for evaporating cooling of our plants. And some of our growers, most growers will use extra irrigation to aid the plant not to experience heat stress. And that water helps in that. Now, if we turn to how that water now moves from the soil to the leaves, it's in a simple concept, which is called soil plant atmosphere continuum. And this basically describes the movement. In a simple terms, it's just the movement of the water from the soil up through the stems of the plant and to the leaves and outside into the atmosphere. And basically, what it means is that the soil, let me have a pointer here. The soil is going to hold water. The roots are going to absorb that water. The plant, through the stems, is acting as a conduit. Through that water, need to move either to the root, to the fruits, or to the leaves, and out of the leaves through transpiration. And this happens because in the atmosphere there is a higher evaporative demand. This higher evaporative demand is the energy that drives that water movement from the soil right through the stem and outside. And this process is continuous because it helps the plant to grow. So just think about it like the atmosphere is going to be thirstier. Is thirstier than the plant, and the plant is thirstier than the soil. So that water will always move from where to quench the thirst of the atmosphere, and therefore it aids the movement of the water through the plant. Now, why do we really panic during when we hear drought? And the answers are here. We look at in the plant, the leaf is the major window through the plant, through which the plant communicates with the outside world. Consider it's like a window, your car window when you are driving to, let's say, to McDonald's to get your, or Starbucks to get your coffee. So through this leaf, we have tiny pores, and this tiny pores is where the plant is losing water, and those tiny pores are the ones that are also helping the plant to capture enough carbon to aid photosynthesis. So two roles that are being played by the leaf. It helps the plant to perform photosynthesis and make sugars and carbohydrates, and it stands another challenge of losing water during that process. And so with the analogy with like in drive-thrus, imagine you are in the middle of summer, you are keeping your car cool, but you need, let's say, a burger. You will have to open your window to talk to get your burger and close your window really fast so that you don't lose the cooling effect of your AC. And the plant is also working that way. Its AC are those tiny pores, but it has also the problem of closing those pores and not manufacturing sugar. So it has to balance that. So as the drought continues, those pores have to be closed, and therefore there is impaired leaf photosynthesis. A continuation of drought means the leaf will have to let go some of the leaves. So some of these leaves will turn yellow. They become non-photosynthetic active, and then there's loss of total leaf surface area, and that means to the plant there is less sugar being produced, which means there is less sugar going to the fruit, there is less sugar going to the growth tissues, and there is less sugar or starch being stored for the next season. If, for instance, by chance your vine has fruits, they are going to shrivel. They are going to be exposed. The vine, by losing the leaf, they are going to be exposed, and then your fruits are going to get sunburn. The repercussion on the wine is that at the end of it, we are going to get poor wine quality that we cannot be able to sell. Now, when we turn to the soil, a fully drained soil is drained soil until all the soil pores are completely filled, is we call what we call fill capacity, and it is about negative 0.3 bars. Now, as the drought ravages on, there is less and less soil moisture, so there is more tension. The plant cannot be able to absorb that because the soil is holding so much to that water until maybe we have permanent wilting point. The lowest soil moisture threshold at which the plant will basically wilt, and that wilting will never be, is not reversible. So we consider this when we hear the drought, we actually panic because of the biggest impact of drought on our vine growth and development. Having said that, all right, so we move to next. Having said that, we have problems with in-season, because we are thinking about in-season drought. How do the growers cope? And some folks may ask, we are under irrigated viticulture. Why are we thinking about in-season drought? And this is because even though we are under irrigation, there are times when the snowpacks, there is not enough snow. And since we are depending on the cascades, snows in the cascades, there is less water going to be available in the rivers, and therefore the irrigation districts sometimes will have to ration that amount of water. And so even though we are irrigated, we depend on the irrigation districts, the amount of water available from the irrigation districts to be able to do our viticulture, to vine production. For folks that are dry farmed, like in New York, in Tennessee, and Texas, this is still an issue because sometimes the rain fails mid-season. And there is no way that they can be able to have a nice crop at the end of it because they don't have a supplemental rain. You cannot just stand there and ask the rain to come. So the questions of how much does drought timing matter becomes very important. Does drought from fruit set, how is drought from fruit set compared to drought coming at very soon when the fruits are just turning color? How that is important when you are looking at two varieties with different wine style, like Cabernet Sauvignon, which is red wine, and Riesling, which is white wine. The wine style are different. The management is going to be different. The impact of drought is going to be different, and the impact on the quality of our wine later on is going to be different. Then the question of, if we have in-season drought, does fruit removal actually alleviate the drought stress effects? And are there any carryover effects for the next season, for the next year? So those are the questions that we are going to try to tease apart. This experiment, so I did a field experiment in southeastern Washington, and this is a vineyard here at WSU Prosa. The experiment for the drought was for three years. I started the drought experiment in 2022, and continued in 2023 and 2024. In 2025, I stopped drought and re-irrigated all the vines. So all vines were irrigated in 2025, and no fruit was removed in 2025. This is a mature vineyard that we are talking about, and the varieties are two. Like we've said, the impact could be different depending on the variety and the wine style that we are looking at. And just for your information, this vineyard is unrooted. So maybe there could have been impact on that could have been conferred by rootstocks, but these are just unrooted vines. Then fruit removal were we had three different fruit removal. We had vines that we didn't remove the fruit. We have vines that we only removed half of the fruit, and vines that we removed all the clusters. So all the fruits were dropped. This vineyard, we had three treatments. One of the treatments was drought from fruit set. The other was we waited until the berries were ripening. So that is the drought from very soon. And we compared our results with the industry standard, which is the RDI control. Before our drought, we had all the vines were fully irrigated. So full irrigation until bloom. Then after bloom, there is what we call industry standard. So for drought from very soon, there was industry standard before we put our drought treatment. Then after harvest, post-harvest, we've returned irrigation to all our vines because we needed the vines also to survive over winter. So this is very important, that we do not kill our vines. We needed them for the successive years. Some of the measurements that we took were like plant water status, and that was just plant water status, and mostly midday leaf water potential is what I took. Canopy temperature during the hot period of the season, leaf canopy chlorosis, which of course is basically the color of the leaf, shoot length and flower numbers were taken at bloom, just to measure in early season shoot length. Then I had measurements on berry weight, cluster number and yield, and the basic fruit composition. And because this equipment, the pressure chamber, is really very important when we are talking about plant water stress and drought, I want to take a little bit of time here to explain to folks that probably have not interacted with this equipment why we use this and why is something, an addition, a toy that you can have for your vineyard. Now, this, what we are using here is from PMC Instrument Company, which is in Albany, Oregon, but there could be other companies that sell a similar equipment. Now, it has, these are the following components. It has a nitrogen tank. And why nitrogen? Nitrogen is inert, and therefore it is very effective in pushing water through the xylem of the leaf. If it were an oxygen or carbon dioxide, it could interfere with the leaf physiology. So that's why they prefer nitrogen in this. So this is nitrogen tank, which is pressurized. And this is the pressure gauge, which is going to show how much pressure is in the tank. Then we have the rate valve and the control valve, which are here. Whenever we want to, after putting the leaf in the leaf chamber, this is the leaf chamber, we put the leaf here, the leaf is bagged, it's inserted here, leaf petiole is inserted here, we close that, and then we observe from the tip, from the end of the leaf petiole, whether some tiny droplets, not to the droplet, the water is coming out after pressurizing this leaf chamber. Then we have a digital display, pressure display here, that is going to show your readings, whether they are going to be in bars or in megapascals. And something else that I use is usually this hand lens, just to make sure that the end point, to have a precise end point, because we don't want a flowing water. That will not be end point. That will be way after the water has been pushed from the leaf. So this is a very good equipment that helps us to determine when do we need really to irrigate. At what time do we need to put our regulated deficit irrigation? And at what level of stress do we need to have in our field? Especially now that we are having problems with drought each and every year. Now, the readings that we are going to get from here are, this is how they make sense. If we have from 0 to -9, it is negative because we have a tension. So it's tension, that's why it's negative. So from 0 up to -9, there is no stress. So we are not worried. Our vines are doing well. But from 9 to -11, then there is a weak stress. The vines are feeling some weak stress. From -11 to -13, there is mild stress, and these ones are midday leaf water potential. The stem water potential would be much, much higher compared to this. So we are talking about, especially when we are talking about regulated deficit irrigation, then there are points when we want to control shoot growth. Then we make our vines to experience a mild level of stress. So you can go to your vineyard, determine that you are having maybe between 11 and -13, and say, maybe I'm going to leave it for a while here to stop shoot growth. Then you can return water back. Now that we have talked about that, let's spend some time and look at what are some of the results that I got. And this table is really busy, but I want to turn our attention to the left of the graph, the left graph here. On the top of the graph, this is my x-axis, I have the day of the year. And to make it simple to understand, this is June 19th when I took the measurements, when I stopped water for this treatment where it is drought from fruit set, I stopped water and took the measurements, and all the way to September 11 in 2022. Now, on the y-axis, I have the midday leaf water potential in bars. And then we have the pre-Verison, just before Verison and post-Verison. And to understand, the green ones are where the vines were not, the fruits were not removed from the vines. The red colored lines are the vines that had half of the fruit removed, and the green ones are the ones that all the fruits were removed. The standard, industry standard is top here, which is all the dashed lines, and full lines are all drought. I want us to pay attention to where we are in drought and we had removed fruit. So the green one here is where we had removed all the fruit, and in this one it was drought and we did not remove fruit. And we can see that actually the fruit removal really helped. But did it actually help? That is now the question. Now, if we move to the drought from Verison, the same time point from June 19th to September 11th, the same period of pre-Verison and post-Verison, and because we were targeting post-Verison, we stopped water and only took data for this treatment and that. The color coding remains the same, but when you compare the stress level are actually almost the same. So even though our drought from fruit set took longer to get there, and compared to our drought from Verison, the stress was the same. Leaf removal helped a little bit. So probably it is the duration that determines what level of impact you are going to have on the vines. If a vine sits under stress for just a little while, it's not going to be a huge problem compared to a vine that is always under stress. That is going to have a repercussion later. In this, the top on the table here is just showing us the minimum water status reached in bars for fruit removed. So we have drought here from fruit set and drought from Verison. And here is a vine that I did not remove the fruit. Here is a vine, the other vine, that we only removed 50% of the fruit and all the fruits removed. And if you see, you look at the difference, is about 2 bars. Now, it's just that now back to you. Is 2 bars going to make a huge difference? Now, looking at the Riesling, we retain the same graphs. So we concentrate here on the right one, on the left one. On the left one is the drought from fruit set, and this one started a little bit earlier because fruit set in the Riesling is much earlier compared to the Cabernet. So this is June, sorry, let me go back a little bit. This is June 14 compared to June 19, and this is September 6th when I stopped this taking measurements. The x-axis, the y-axis is still the midday leaf water potential, and the dashed lines are still the industry REI, industry practice, and the full lines are the drought. The green one, blue ones are vines where I did not remove the fruit. The red ones is where I removed half of the fruit, and the blue, green is where I removed all the fruit. And you can see that there was some kind of a difference. Similarly to where we had the drought from Verison, if you look at the data. Now, we look at the table, there is about 1 bar or 2 bars difference. And I don't know how much that is going to have a meaning if you remove the fruit or not. Something that to note is that during, at the end of the period, we did not return the water. Let me go back a little bit. We did not return water here, but the vines seemed to feel less stress compared to midway here. And this is because it was cooler, it was becoming cooler, and the vines had lost some of the leaves. So they were a little bit less stressed compared to when we started. Then I was just curious and asked myself, how are these vines really feeling in terms of the canopy temperature? So I took the canopy temperature of our industry standard rows here, which are RDI control, and the vines that were experiencing drought from fruit set. And this is just a flip of this one to show the other side of the canopy. And the difference was about 9 Fahrenheit between the well-irrigated and the ones that were feeling drought. So the vines that were under drought were really, really hot. And that impaired also on the leaf physiology, because they were not able to do what we call evaporative cooling. They have no water, they are closing the stomachs. There's nothing to do with evaporative cooling. They are just under stress, and that really impacts on the vine physiology. Then I went to the field and looked at the vines, and they were responding differently. Even though drought had induced leaf senescence and abscission in both varieties, more leaf abscission was happening in Riesling than in the Cabernet. We can see this. These are the vines that had fruits on. And the Riesling, and this is the Cabernet Sauvignon with the fruits on. As you can see, they are feeling almost the same stress, but Riesling is losing almost all the leaves, exposing the fruit. And since it is a white wine variety where we need less fruit exposure to the sun because of the later phenolics and other things, then we are just imagining what is going to be impact. How are these fruits going to be, or what are the quality of these fruits later on compared to the Cabernet? So that is something to take note of. In terms of yield, the drought from fruit set experienced over 60% of yield loss in both varieties, whereas drought from Verison was about 20%. If you look at the left is Cabernet Sauvignon, and this is the yield in tons per acre. On the far right, on that same graph, is the RDI control, which is our standard industry standard. And the blue ones, if I get the color correct, this blue is where I did not remove the fruit, and the red ones is where we had removed the fruit. The bars are only going to show you whether it was significant or not. And so the bars that are overlapping shows that they were actually not significant. We can see that our RDI, which is the industry standard, performed really much. The yield was really impacted on our drought from fruit set really much compared to even the drought from Verison. Similarly to the Riesling, when we look at that. So we are talking about that. Even both the drought and fruit removal really impacted on the yield. Moving on here, then I was looking at the berry size. What was the impact on the berry size? Was about 36 to 44% smaller berries in both varieties. That is a drought from fruit set. And drought from Verison was about 14 to 20%. And so, but there was no impact on the bricks. In Cabernet Sauvignon, but lower bricks in the Riesling. Higher pH with drought in both varieties, but there was no impact on TA. And just to demonstrate, on the left graph is the berry weight in grams, and On the far right on that graph, we have the industry standard, which is the RDI. If you compare that with our drought from fruit set, then it was actually highly impacted. We had about 1 gram for our industry standard compared to about 5.5 grams in the drought from fruit set. When you look at the same graph, the same results in the Riesling, it was almost the same trend, where you have much more impact from the drought from fruit set. Then there was a question: what if we have drought and also we have freezing temperature, winter freezing temperature? Do the drought-stressed vines stand a chance? Do they stand a chance? So I went to the vineyard, collected canes and buds, and looked at the LT50, the lethal temperature at which the 50% of the buds will be damaged. And here I'm going to just present you some of the results that we got at looking at the 50% bud case. And what I found was, if we have a drought and a dip in temperatures, we are going to have, those vines are not going to survive it. Fruit removal might help, but most slightly in the Riesling. And we can demonstrate this, we can show this by looking at the left graph, which is for the Cabernet Sauvignon. The right graph is Riesling. And on the y-axis, we have the temperature at 50% bud damage. On the x-axis is the dates when I collected the buds. And we have drought from fruit set and not fruit removed, which is on the red, and drought from, RDI, standard industry practice, which is without fruit removal, is a full line. The dash dotted ones is where I removed the fruit. If it is red, it's drought. If it is blue, is the standard industry standard. And we can see that the ones with the drought, even in Cabernet Sauvignon, they were the buds were getting killed at a much lower temperature compared to the ones, a much higher temperature compared to our industry standard. When you look at the Riesling, it was actually the same if you didn't remove the fruit, but if we remove the fruit, it performed almost as the industry standard. Sorry. Then the question of carryover. Did drought have a lasting effect on the vine, and was the dropping fruit helpful? So I collected early season shoot growth and also vine productivity, the number of flowers. And looking at the shoot growth, early season shoot growth, which I did at Bloom, there was a 30% reduction in the second year shoot growth in both varieties when drought came from, started at fruit set. And this is very important because we had irrigated these vines similarly at the beginning of the season. So at Bloom, we are just coming to do the measurements, and you can see that the vines that had their drought from fruit set, those shoots were really smaller compared to our industry standard. And this is Cabernet Sauvignon. The data for Cabernet Sauvignon, shoot length is on the y-axis. The different drought treatments are on the x-axis. And like I mentioned before, if our error bars are overlapping, then they are not significantly different. In the Riesling, is the same, but you can see a little bit where we had removed the fruit and drought from fruit set, they performed the same way, the same as the industry standard. Then looking at the vine productivity, in the vine, we have the flowers, and the flowers are very unique that each flower has a cap. So with this cap, we can be able to count how many flowers are actually in that cluster, in that flower cluster. So what I did was selected a uniform shoot, both sides of the cordon, and bagged a flower cluster. Then at fruit set, I came when all these caps had fallen, I came and took them to the lab to be counted. And there are just a few hundreds to maybe 1,000 caps that we found. And what we found was that drought from fruit set actually reduced the next year productivity. There was about 33 to 41% reduction in the flower numbers. So we are having a lasting impact of this drought, even into the next year when we have actually returned the water. So this is a flowers per cluster, and these are our different drought. This is our drought treatment, and this is our standard industry standard. And you can see that the drought ones had less flowers. Fruit removal actually helped, mostly in the Riesling. Something that I noticed was that the vines, Cabernet Sauvignon vines that had gone through drought from fruit set had a cordon dieback. So I took this data, and they were about 10% cordon, drying cordon from the edge of the cordon moving wards to the middle of the cordon. We are yet to find out why this is so, and mostly in the Cabernet Sauvignon, that all the leaves stayed even during drought. We don't know whether it was because of the less carbon stored, lost starch stored for the regrowth of these shoots. Then the question that I was trying to answer was, what happens to the yield when vines are irrigated back? Now, drought has happened for 3 years. These vines have experienced extreme drought at those 2 time points. In the final year, we are coming with water. We are irrigating them, not removing the fruit, dropping the fruit. So what are they going to compensate? Is dropping fruit going to compensate for the lost yields in the previous seasons, or what is going to happen? So that is the question that I was trying to address. And what I found was the yield was actually impacted even after water was put back. Fruit removal alleviated the loss a little bit, but that is something up for discussion. So I still had about 50% yield loss in previously exposed drought from fruit set, and the ones that had been exposed from drought from very soon were about 30 to 40% yield loss. And this graph here is just showing percent yield reduction relative to the control. You are not going to see the control. The control is 0 here. So the shorter these bar graphs, the better. If they are taller like this, then it means we are still having a huge impact. And so for Cabernet Sauvignon, if you have the drought from fruit set and drought from very soon, it's still going to last. We are still not getting our standard industry practice, because even when we return the water, we don't know if the second year of returning water or the third year, the vines will be the same. The impact of drought will have already been lost. So the same thing in the Riesling, but you can see in the Riesling, at least with removing fruit, there were less and less yield that were being lost. So there was a little bit of a recovery. Now, the other question that we have been asking ourselves, what does this dropping fruit mean economically? Should we have drought, a predicted drought, and then we just move to drop the fruits? Does it really make an economic sense? So let's say dropping fruit in the Riesling, we found that our industry standard had about 6 tons per acre. Now, in Washington, dropping fruit from 6 tons per acre to 3 tons will cost you about $350 an acre. Now, we have not considered how much you have, the vineyard size, whether the fruits are being, you are harvesting, actually having the fruits are being harvested and being taken out of the vineyard, or there is a repeated drought events, so you have to really come every year and drop the fruit, and whether you are going to drop all the fruit, all the 6 tons, that is going to increase your cost. And the question is, we have seen that by dropping the fruit, we can only have 20 to 40% of yield, more yield with dropping the fruit, which is still below the RDI. So is this compensatory enough? Is this enough to compensate for the money that you and the labor that you are going to put there? Now, as I finish, I would like to, if there is anything to forget, I want us not to forget these points. One of the points is that the drought from fruit set or very soon will increase stress alike. We've seen that. But the most important factor here is how long the vine is going to be under that stress. If it is going to sit under that stress for a longer time, the impact is going to be huge. And fruit removal slightly improves the water status of the drought-stressed vines. The second point is that the drought from fruit set depresses yield more than the drought from very soon. And this is a question for the industry. Should we, during times of drought, should we allow our growers to have their water until very soon, at least for them not to lose some yield? To get some, to harvest something out of their lots of energy, lots of work that they have put there? Or how can we, for the growers that have many other industries like alfalfa or others like blueberries, can they be able to switch water around and be able to target their irrigation until very soon? But this is something which is up to discussion. Then drought from very soon has fewer and lasting impacts on the yield, and that comes back to that. Drought from fruit sets comprises compromises bud called injury, hardiness, and next year's vine growth. So we need to think also about that. Then when drought starts at fruit set, fruit removal somewhat improves bud called hardiness and the next year's vine growth, mostly in the Riesling. The last point is Riesling and Cabernet Sauvignon are similarly impacted by drought stress, but only Riesling tends to be benefit from fruit removal. And maybe it is because of it's losing leaves, it is trying to retain water, so some of the water is going to be available for the next season. Performance of the carbon photosynthesis. Before I finish, we have resources. WAVEx extension has very good resources that we can always go to. We can always go to wine.wsu.edu to get some information about what is the impact of the fruit removal, what is the impact of drought, how do I manage our vines. And I can't get my lighter here as I finish to take, oh no, excuse me. So if you go to that, are you still seeing my slide? This is the website for wine extension, and you can see lots of information that they have. Even when you're talking about irrigation and water management, you can go there, hang on that irrigation and grapes, irrigation basics for Washington, drought management in wine grapes. You can have that resource. Oh, sorry for that. Maybe I'm not.
Charles, no, it did not go to the website, but that's okay. They've got that web address and they'll be able to go later.
Okay. So I think I'm done. If it didn't go, I don't know how to go back. So I think with that, I just want to thank the Washington State Wine Commission for the funding of this work, the USDA Northwest Center for Small Foods Research for also their funding of this work, this St. Michel Distinguished Professorship also funding funding this work, and Washington State Viticulture and Enology Department for the resources and the technical support from Alan Kawakami, Keller's lab, and Michelle Moyer's lab for all the resources that they accorded during this work. Thank you, and I will be open to questions.
Great, Charles, if you could stop sharing, then we can go to a Q&A. If you have questions, folks, go ahead and put them in that Q&A box, and I'll read them out to Charles.
How do I do that? Interesting. I don't seem to get that.
That's okay if it won't stop, Charles. We'll just go straight to the Q&A. First question is starts with a comment. Your results you had presented on cold hardiness about the two extreme treatments, just so that you could keep your graphs simplified. But this person would like to know, how about the effects or the results from drought experience on cold hardiness only on the veraison started drought?
That's a very good question. Because we were seeing major impact on the drought from fruit set, and given the amount of work in collecting this data, we didn't go through to the drought from veraison. So that we didn't collect the data, because we are not seeing major impact on that.
Okay, so you're seeing a small enough effect that it wasn't worth pursuing or presenting those results. They were too close to the industry standard.
Yes, they were too close to the industry standard, but it is worth it. It's something that someone worth doing. If we were time, we would have done that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. We have another question. This person asks, there seems to be significant differences between the two varieties studied. Do we have any hints on how any other varieties would perform?
At the beginning of this project, we were not thinking that the varieties were going to be different. And since we are looking at, we are seeing some kind of different responses. They are good, but I don't know. At this point, I don't know how Malo is going to perform compared to Riesling or Cabernet Sauvignon, or because of their canopy, the way their canopy structure, architecture, they are going to the way they are going to manage drought, whether they are going to lose all the leaves, that can impact on how the vine is going to respond to drought. So at this time, I really have no idea, but it's a good question that we can pull apart. I can do later on, maybe find something.
So a good follow-up study then might be to look at different varieties, because we do know that some varieties respond differently to drought stress than others, of course. But it was a nice choice of Cabernet as a representative red and Riesling as a representative white, of course.
Yes.
Great. Do we have any other questions from our attendees? I don't see any more in the Q&A. So I want to thank Charles very much for putting this set together. Did a great job with this piece of research. Hopefully we will see some follow-up in the years to come. And we thank you very much, Charles. Good luck.
Thank you so much, and everybody for attending.
Okay, then we will end the webinar.
Thank you.